President Trump's base might be shrinking before our very eyes. Now, despite the fact that, of course, that coronavirus has completely upended our lives, and, well, unfortunately for some time, some things are still going on as planned, which is the 2012 election between presumptive nominee Joe Biden and President Donald Trump. Now, thanks to coronavirus, I shouldn't say thanks, but coronavirus generally targets the elderly, right? And because of that, Biden might actually end up getting an advantage in this election that he had never considered. So now this comes from, of course, an analysis from a new academic journal that points out that deaths of 65 and older Republican voters in certain swing states will now far exceed that of Democrats, which could give Biden an electoral advantage. So let me just say, I've got some mixed feelings about actually even doing this story, because I don't want to give anybody the wrong idea. This is not something that we should be celebrating. I really don't like the idea of reducing this pandemic to political points, right? To saying, hey, man, look, Democrats could win. At this point, I don't really. Okay, the only reason that I would actually care about Democrats winning is because maybe we could actually get some somewhat competent leadership. And again, when you're looking at Joe Biden, yeah, he doesn't scream competent. But then you look at Donald Trump and you're like, well, okay, low bar. I think, there's a lot of people that would be a lot more competent than Donald Trump. So there's that, right? So, but anyway, I still feel like it's important to look at this, the implications of this when it comes to the differences between, of course, hardcore Trump supporters. And I'm not saying the average Trump supporter. I'm saying the hardcore people, the people that are out there protesting right now because they can't get a freaking haircut. All right. Those are the people that are at risk of death from coronavirus. It's the people that are not practicing social distancing. These are the people that are not staying at home, that are defying stay-at-home orders, putting themselves and other people at risk. So now, let me get to this analysis and what Politico writes about it. They say that mass casualties from COVID-19 could upend the political landscape and shift contests away from President Trump. Quote, academic researchers conclude that when considering nothing other than the tens of thousands of deaths projected from the virus, demographic shifts alone could be enough to swing crucial states to Joe Biden in the fall. The pandemic is going to take a greater toll on the conservative electorate leading to this election, and that's simply just a calculation of age. Now, the lead author, of course, is the one that said that. That's Andrew Johnson, and he's a professor of management at Texas A&M. Now, he also says that the virus is killing more older voters, and in many states, it's a key to a GOP victory. Well, that's true. Now, they do forget that there is voter suppression and the fact that we do have a pandemic, and Republicans are resisting vote by mail efforts. They think, oh, no, we can't vote by mail because it's so unsecure. Really, the military seems to use it just fine. I'm just saying, like, hey, the military can use it and you trust them to use it. Why can't you trust regular people to use it? It's because more people that vote, the more people tend to vote Democrats instead of Republicans. Just saying. So there's that consideration. That's why Republicans are fighting it so much. And that's why, of course, they're also doing voter suppression. And the reason that vote by mail, of course, is so important right now is because you want to reduce in-person voting. Not just for Democrats, but also for Republicans. Because I actually care about their health. They may not care about their health, and they may think, oh, you're goddamn libtard telling me how to live my life. You can go get coronavirus and die. Well, you know what? I actually do care about you and your families. It sucks. Sometimes I don't want to care, but I'm a human being, and you're also human beings, and I do actually care. And so, hey, it is what it is. It's a weakness, apparently. And that's unfortunately what it seems to be in politics, is that if you have any sort of empathy for other human beings, well, that's a weakness that must be exploited. Of course. But now, we've seen evidence that doing in-person voting, like what happened in Wisconsin, where, of course, the Democratic Party said, well, go ahead and it's safe. Go out and vote. Whereas Bernie Sanders supporters mainly stayed home because Bernie Sanders is like, it's not worth it. It's not worth going out there and voting because you could get sick and all that. So I'm not going to tell people, that you should go out and vote for me. That's your decision. Okay. So we've seen this in Wisconsin. As I said, people are now coming back and saying that voted in person, they're now coming back and getting sick. So there's that. All right. So now how many people are we talking as far as they're going to get sick? Well, Johnson and his colleagues, Wendy Pollack and Beth Rajas, projected that even with shelter-in-place orders remaining in effect, about 11,000 more Republicans and Democrats who were 65 or older could die before the election in both Michigan and North Carolina. Those are two states, 11,000 people. Now, we just passed nationally 50,000 people, so you might think, wait a minute, that's really, really high. And that's one of the faults of the study. And so they kind of overestimate, in their own opinion, overestimate the numbers. But that doesn't mean that we can't see similar higher numbers. For example, instead of 11,000, maybe 8,000 or 10,000. That's still devastating. That's still a lot of people. Now, in Pennsylvania, they also project that should the state return to only using social distancing to fight infections, over 13,000 more Republican than Democratic voters in that age category would be lost. Again, the study is based on early fatality projections from covidactionnow.org and are orders of magnitude higher than what's been borne out so far in battleground states. You've actually seen less people dying in those states. So those projections, again, are very overestimated. But still, yes, you should take the numbers with a grain of salt, but it could be higher, could be lower. There's still a high likelihood that a lot of people could needlessly die. And that's the whole point. Now, William Galston, a Brookings Institution scholar on governance, did address this and said the effects are large enough only to affect outcomes in states that are very narrowly divided. The states, for example, you've got swing states like Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. So that's important because those are important electoral college states. And those are where Trump, Biden has a lead in some of these states and is doing better. But you got to remember, at this point in the 2016 election, Hillary Clinton led in these states as well by a larger margin. So understand that, right? And so that should put up some alarm bells. It really should. So now, also, Galston said that the study, looking at the analysis, he said, look, the numbers may be off a bit, but the whole study does make sense. You are going to see more conservatives that end up dying from COVID-19 than you will see from liberals. So, all right. Now, Trump supporters, they also mentioned in the study, especially in Greater Appalachia, tend to be older and heavier, traits correlated with underlying conditions that make COVID-19 more lethal. Smoking levels, another leading indicator of vulnerability, also tend to be higher in red areas. Now, look, I don't want to say this only affects older voters. Anybody can get sick, of course, from this, and we've seen young people die as well. But the fact is that older people are more at risk of complications due to age. Now, the thing is that affects politics is that they tend to be more the reliable voters. They tend to turn out and vote more. So, obviously a way to remedy this is to make sure everybody can vote by mail. But as I mentioned before, Republicans are against this. They're against this entire idea. So if they're against voting by mail and they still want to hold elections, especially during COVID-19, and then not practice social distancing measures or to give people masks and things like that, well, then the result is you're going to have more people turn out in person and they will die. Simply put. And this doesn't even have to correlate to, when you hold actual elections. you also have protesters out there that are, funded by right-wing groups, Betsy DeVos, and they're going out there and they're protesting and they're not doing social distancing. And then they're, possibly transmitting the virus and then going home and spreading that virus to their family, friends, etc. And so, yeah, that's a real problem. That's a real issue that is affecting the people who are being the least careful, which happen to be Trump supporters. So, I mean, the logical conclusion here is you are seeing more conservatives and Trump supporters getting sick and dying. Again, you can point to some, higher profile examples of Trump supporters or pastors, Trump supporting pastors that, were highly critical of, COVID-19 or the response to COVID-19, then getting COVID-19, and then, then they die. So that's a problem. That is a problem. And so, but again, there are a lot of Trump supporters, and there's a reason that they don't believe in coronavirus. A lot of them are ignorant. They don't believe in the science. They don't believe in the facts. And even if they do, they might think, hey, look, I know coronavirus is bad, but I think the economy crashing is worse. So I guess it's worth the risk. As Dan Patrick and other conservatives have openly said, hey, man, look, we know it's bad, but we got to get back to work. We can't have something that's worse. We can't have the cure be worse than the disease. That's going to end up biting them in the ass. And another thing, of course, biting Trump in the ass is his response to this, which is turning senior citizens away from him in the polls. In fact, seniors by significant numbers nationally prioritize defeating the virus over reviving the economy, which has, of course, taken a gigantic dive. A bunch of recent polls have pointed out that, these seniors are not interested in really doing anything about the economy right now, but are putting and prioritizing this virus first. And so now Trump, in response to this, is starting to acknowledge that his policies are, like the impact of his policies on older people. In fact, in a tweet on Wednesday, the president, while cheering on states moving to reopen, he does say this, quote, special care is and always will be given to our beloved seniors, except me. Trump added in this message, their lives will be better than ever. We love you all. He also used similar language last month, saying seniors will be watched over protectively and lovingly. But here's the thing. He's not actually doing that policy-wise. We still lag in overall testing. We're not doing aggressive testing. In fact, he's saying, states, that's your job to test. We're actually not going to help prioritize testing at all. We're going to let you do it, and we're going to sit back. And also, we're going to let some of the states go bankrupt. But wait, the state governments are on the front line fighting coronavirus. They're doing lockdowns, which is reducing their revenue. But those lockdowns are used to try to fight and contain coronavirus while we do aggressive testing and while we do isolation and tracing, right? Contact tracing. Once you're able to isolate all the people who are sick and put them into quarantine so that they are no longer contagious, that's when you can start to bring out the general public. Trump's not doing that. No, McConnell and the rest of the Republicans are saying, no, we're going to let the states that are on the, on the front lines, we're going to let them go bankrupt. So they have to lay off a bunch of workers. And so they can't do the things that are necessary to actually fight coronavirus. And that's going to, of course, have the result of having the states open up sooner when they're not ready and putting more people at risk. That's the problem. And so it's going to be greatly ironic if these projections, even the most dire projections, prove to be true because of the reaction of the Trump administration. I mean, yes, there are caveats to the study, as I mentioned before. The numbers could end up being way too dramatic or maybe not dramatic enough in the worst case scenario. Uh, in the way, this could also lead to the complete decimation of the Republican base or the Republican Party by killing a majority of their base. We don't know what's going to happen, but I would rather side on the air of making sure we protect people. And yes, doing a little bit of damage to the economy, I know, heads explode, but I would rather protect human life over corporate profits. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.